Hey everyone, Dustin here with Jagged Brush Studios. How is it going? Glad to see you here. Kind of talking to myself because I don't know that there's anyone in the stream right now, but you know, that's how it goes sometimes. So if you come back and watch this video after I have live streamed it, I'm welcoming you. So let me see here, get a couple of things just set the way I want, and we'll get started. Today I've got some clones I'm going to paint for you. I've done them on stream before, but I'm going to go ahead and do them again today, since I'm just trying to really doing the stream to test out my mic, make sure I get my levels done right, make sure that everything is going the way that is intended. So, yeah. That's where we're at. Alright, so I've got these clones that I've got started. I've been putting them off for a while, so let me see about fixing some video issues that seem to be cropping up real fast. They're really washed out, so turn my exposure down just a touch. And see if that's any better. Yeah, I think that looks better. Let me know what you think in the chat. And we will go ahead and just move these off to the side and we'll go ahead and get started. Let's see here. I'm going to need my Necromancer Cloak color. So all the colors that I'm going to use on these today should be listed in the chat, or not in the chat, I'm sorry, in the video description. If you're just joining us, since you're my only viewer, if you could be very kind as to let me know how my voice levels are. I've got a new microphone I'm testing out. It's a little bit difficult for me to tell that on my end without a monitor that you guys will hear. So if you could just leave in the chat what you think, I would appreciate that. If you hear a weird buzzing vibration noise, it is my paint mixer off to the side, so I do apologize for that. It sounds like probably something that's not very family friendly. So I've got some Army Painter Necromancer Cloak here. I'm going to use that for all of my blacks on my clones. So we'll start with this guy, just because he's the one that I grabbed first. Alright. So, I have these hot glued down to a little handle. The hot glue holds them in place real well. So the things that I've found with like blue tack, using blue tack, is that they tend to fall off when you apply a wash, so I use hot glue. Welcome to the channel if you're just joining. Drop me a message, let me know you're here. Love to chat with my viewers. One other thing I've done with these guys is I've not glued them together yet so that I can take them apart to get to the parts that I need to. So we're just painting clones. I know I've done a live guide on them before in the past, so I picked something that I had ready to go so that, like I said, I'm really just wanting to test my microphone levels and make sure everything sounds right. So again, I'm gonna continue to ask till I get some feedback from some people on what they think about the levels of my microphone in the chat. So let me pop out chat and see if that, make sure y'all, last time I was streaming I couldn't actually see any of the chat for some goofy reason, and I had to pop it out. So maybe that's it, I don't know, maybe nobody's saying anything. Alright. So like I said, the color we're working with here is Necromancer Cloak. I do use almost exclusively Army Painter paints. I've been real happy with the product I've been able to produce with them, and really enjoy working with their product. This whole streaming thing is a learning process for me. I learn something new every time I do it. All right. Get all of the black areas painted on this. If you've watched any of my streams before, you know that Stormtroopers and now clones are some of my least favorite miniatures to paint. They're just not super appealing color-wise. I don't like doing the black and white scheme because it's boring and tedious and monotonous to paint. But sometimes you gotta do what you gotta do. These clones are not for me, they're for a customer. I don't plan on playing clones because I already play Empire, and I don't want to have to paint more of these guys. Honestly, that's the reason I don't plan on playing them. It's just so I don't have to paint them. So what I've done prior to is I have airbrushed these guys with an ash gray up to a Spaceship Exterior color to do the white. So kind of did a zenithal thing. You don't have to use an airbrush. You can definitely just paint them. I'd recommend starting with the Spaceship Exterior as your white, which is a really light gray. It's one of my favorite colors to paint with from the Army Painter range when painting these troopers or anything that needs to be white. I use it on white for just about everything, and then highlight up to pure white later. So I am working with a wet palette here. It's another tool that I've added to my arsenal in the last year or so, and it's invaluable. If you want my full thoughts on my wet palette, I do have a video on my channel about this wet palette that I'm using specifically and why I couldn't live without it. Alright, missed a spot. His head pops off so I can paint his neck. Honestly, if you didn't paint under there, you probably wouldn't see it very well anyways, so you're not missing out a whole lot if you don't. Alright, getting there. Let's put his head back on and start working on that piece. Feeling a little bit more shaky than normal tonight for some goofy reason. I don't know why. Swap glasses here. Sorry about that. All right. So when working on the mask here, I tend to use some pretty watered down paint because I want it to flow. But be careful getting it flowing off the mask, the eyepiece, because it will flow everywhere if you get it too wet. Pretty happy with that. Better. I'm not going to get the pieces below the mouth because what we'll do is we're going to come back with a really fine wash and that will take care of that. Alright. And then the brow. I've seen people forget that and it just looks weird if you don't do it, so make sure you get the brow piece. The brow ridge, I think it's called. So this how to paint these guys tutorial that I've done, and I've done another one on my channel which is essentially the same stuff, how to paint the clones, would work great for the actual clone models. It'll work great for your riders on your bark speeders. It will work for your upgrade expansion pack that's coming out, or should be out most places. I have not received mine yet, so otherwise I'd be probably painting some of those. I don't know. I needed to get a do-back done for a customer, but I'm primarily focusing on a couple of Clone Wars core sets for him. I want to get those out the door. I do need to paint some droidicas for that, so I may get the droidicas out of the way. Maybe I'll stream the droidicas on Thursday. I can't stream on Wednesday nights. I play in a Star Wars Edge of the Empire campaign with a group of people that I've really enjoyed playing with. It's an online campaign. For those not familiar with that, it's a role-playing style game in the vein of Dungeons and Dragons, but it's Star Wars because Star Wars Ultimate uses a different rule set system also. So I've really enjoyed it. I like the rule set. It's very narrative driven, theater of the mind stuff, and then the group that I play with make it pretty great also. For those interested in that kind of stuff, I play a Bothan smuggler, pilot smuggler. He's essentially Han Solo with fur. But the group I was joining needed a pilot, and he's a... You have reached the voicemail box of Kino. I couldn't just be a pilot. I needed to have some gunslinging stuff going on there too.
Just wait for the tone.
Just doing all the black on these guys.
We're trying to reach is not available right now.
Scoot my chair over so I stop painting off stream. Over to the side.
If you need further assistance, enter pound now.
This song is weird. Who sat around and thought, you know what? I think I'm gonna make a song out of random voicemail noise.
Name, number, and a message after the tone. Goodbye.
Painting black on white dudes. I don't like doing this. It gets tedious. This is only number 2. Granted, I'm not doing any colors on these clones, they're just white clones. My understanding was the Phase 2s had more colors on them. I may be incorrect, but that's what I'm doing for my customer. What you see me going back and doing is, if I make a boo-boo somewhere, I wet my brush, clean my brush real quick, wet it, and then I take a wet brush back to the areas to clean up anywhere where I made a mistake. So, as long as you get back to it fairly quick, you can usually get it cleaned off. We'll do that when I take his arms off. We'll get up under in that gun. Alright, so decapitate him. Put his head back on. Wonder what it's called when you if decapitate is removing a head, what's it called when you put a head back on, I wonder? Is it recapitate? All right. Made a boo-boo. Welcome to any new viewers that are joining us. Glad to have you here. You haven't missed a whole lot. You've missed me putting black on white troopers. If you missed the first one, which you did, I'm going to do 5 more after this one. So you'll get to see what I'm doing 5 more. I'm working here with Necromancer Cloak still. Leave me a message in the chat if you're just joining. Testing out the new levels of the new mic I got. I'd love to know your feedback on how the microphone sounds. I mean, everything looks fine to me in the levels, but I can't tell on my end. Like, it doesn't look like anything's peaking in my equalizer, so we'll see. We'll see. If you've seen any of my other streams, I would appreciate your feedback, or if I'd just appreciate the feedback at all regarding the microphone levels, as that's been, honestly, that's been the only thing that's given me a whole lot of trouble streaming, is my audio levels. Alright, we're gonna take this gun off real quick so that we can paint up in here. We're gonna set that aside, let it dry, let it dry. I'm sorry if you hear like a frog noise in the background. It rained here at my house recently, and there's a drainage ditch that runs in front of my house, and there's bullfrogs that's in there. Earlier they were kind of croaking quite a bit, so I'm not sure if they're doing that or not. I don't have any monitor turned on for my mic because the way I stream my music, you guys would hear it, and so it would get a weird echo. If you could, leave in the comments what you would like to see me stream next. As far as Star Wars Legion, if there's specific models you would like to see streamed, I could see about doing that. Also, if you've followed my channel at all or follow my Facebook page, you've seen I've gone into partnership with the Fifth Trooper Network, and I'm doing some hobby videos with them. The first one is up. It's over on their channel, called Basic Battlefield Basing, where I do a desert base, a forest base, and a plains base for like an open field type area. So I do those three, but I'm looking for ideas for new hobby videos. These are going to be shorter in nature. I think that one's 20-something minutes long. But what would you like to see if I were to put out how-to videos? Is there specific content you're looking for? So you can leave that in the chat now if you're watching live, or if you're watching this as a playback, just leave it in the comments, and I will review all of the comments and try to answer any questions. I try to reply to comments as much as possible, because when I consume content, I like to be able to interact with the creators that are creating that content also. So if you watched my last stream, you saw the Bark Speeder. I finished that up after the game on Sunday. I needed a little bit of a pick-me-up after the game on Sunday, because if you follow my page, you will see that I am a diehard 49ers fan, and that did not go so well for us on Sunday. But it is what it is. That's sports. I know a lot of y'all aren't into sports, so I'll leave that conversation there. So this is probably just a primary repeat of the last live paint guide I did for these guys. I'm not changing a whole lot, using the Necromancer Cloak as my black base. The reason for that is that when we wash it with our dark tone, it'll darken it up to a nice black, but leave some of the highlight tones in there still. So if you start with pure black, you have nowhere to go for your shadows. And we need shadows. Shadows and highlights give complexity and contrast to our miniature and make them more interesting. If our minis were all just like 4 primary flat colors, they'd be boring. So that's one of the #1 tips that I see people, and it's something I honestly still struggle with myself, is push more contrast. So if you're using a red, take that red highlight a little bit higher than you think you would, or take that red shadow down to almost like a pure black shadow. Really push some of those colors to their extremes in your highlights and shadows. Alright, again, thinned out paint for the mask. Need a little bit more thinned out than that. And I'm not worried about getting too much. If you look at this mask here, I'm not sure if you can see it, but if you look at the mask, I kind of went over onto the cheek plates a little bit. That's fine. We'll clean that up in with a highlight, because we're going to come back and highlight those ridges under the eyepieces anyways. So don't worry about if you get it too far. Now, if you cover the whole thing with paint, that might be an issue, but if you have a little bit of it over paint, that's okay. For some reason, these are some of the minis that I hear people fear the painting the most. For good reason. White and black are 2 difficult colors to work with and make look nice, especially when they're contrasting so close to each other on a miniature. But you know what? Just jump in and try it. Don't forget these brow ridges. They make your mini look weird if you don't have them. But try to make sure there's a white gap between your brow ridge and the eyepiece. Give me just a moment. All right, 3 down, 4 to go. Get the unit leader here. Move some stuff around on my desk real quick. Right. Like I said, I'm not doing anything new or innovative from my last stream of these guys. Hey, Sareth. Thanks for joining. Let me know what the audio sounds like on this new microphone. Still painting clones there as well, huh? Wow. Yeah, painting clones is a ton of fun. Let me just tell you. If you're watching this later and you haven't yet, go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you like what you see. I am getting more regular content back up and streaming again, so glad to be doing that. If you would like to be notified of whenever I go live, there's a little bell icon you can do to turn on notifications. It'll tell you anytime I post a new video or go live. Is it loud enough? Did I get it turned up enough? That was some of the complaints I've had. So far, I've been impressed with this little mic that I got. It's for a $30 US mic. It seems to be working real well. I just don't have the kind of money to be dropping on a, a Blue Yeti or something crazy like that. Great. When I did my testing and playback before I went live, it sounded better than my old mic. I recorded a test video. I figured out that in my Windows setting, some obscure setting somewhere, my mic wasn't turned up all the way, which I think was part of the issue. And so when I maxed it out in OBS, my streaming software, it didn't actually let me ever go to the maximum the microphone would work. So that was part of the issue, but I also think having a clearer mic is going to be helpful. So there's that too. I just realized I forgot to do something on this guy, so ta-da. Forgot to get his arm marks. So I'm planning on being live again Thursday, and that'll probably be a new miniature. I said maybe Droidicas, but I also need to paint a Captain Rex, so I'm not sure which one of those I'll do on Thursday. If you want to vote, if you're watching this and you want to vote, leave it in the comments what you would prefer to see on Thursday. I don't think I've done a Droidica paint yet that I remember. Alright, so we'll set his arms aside. Get back to painting the Clone Commander. So I'll probably paint till 11:30 or so Eastern Time. That should give me enough time to finish this squad. I think I mentioned it before, but on the last stream I painted up a bark speeder. If you would like to see what that ended up looking like with the clones attached, go to my Facebook page. I did post that over there. So you base before you paint. I don't base before I paint. These are the bases for all these guys. And droids. Actually, I think these are droids. I haven't done the other bases yet. I paint first and then base later. Because I'm a messy painter. Welcome to anybody just joining the stream. Glad to have you. Drop a message in the chat and let me know you're here. Alright. Hey, Paul. Thanks for stopping by. Just a reminder to those that are watching in live, as I bump my complete desk everywhere, there's a slight delay between what you type, when I see it, and when I can respond. I know some people may not be familiar with how live streaming works, so. How's your evening going tonight, Paul? Gotcha. Yeah, I've seen your industrial basing, Sareth. They look nice. Oh, Paul, believe me, it takes me a whole lot of inspiration to get my own clones painted. And these aren't mine. In fact, I have decided, because I don't feel like painting my own clones, I'm just not going to play the army. It's easier for me that way. That, and with doing the live streams and painting my own stuff and painting customer stuff, I just don't have enough time. My intent was to paint all 4 factions for myself and have all 4 factions, you know, be represented, and I just don't have the time to do all that. So something had to go, and so I cut Rebels, and I'm gonna cut Rebels, and I'm gonna cut Clones, and I'm gonna play droids and Empire. For those joining late, I'm working with a color called Necromancer Cloak here from Army Painter. To start these guys, I airbrushed them with some ash gray and zenithal with a Spaceship Exterior. However, you could just base them in Spaceship Exterior and then dry brush and paint up there. So I'm not going to be doing dry brushing in these guys just because I'm happy with where they're at. They will be getting a wash, and then I will be doing some spot highlights to bring back some of the white colors. So, yeah. I boo-booed the brow ridge on this one, so I'll have to come back and clean it up with a fine brush later. Let's decapitate them real quick. Like I said earlier in the stream, I've not actually glued any of these guys together at all. I like to leave the parts unglued so it's easier to reach the areas that are difficult to paint. I'll put his head back on. We'll fix that little blemish with the wash later. Put his arm back on and set him aside. We've got 3 more. Alright, that regiment brush is getting to the end of its life. I'll pull out a new one. Brand spanking new. That's a detail brush. Grab the wrong one. There we go, regiment. All right, back to working. I need to clean that other brush out. I'll get it cleaned out later. Painting with a new brush takes a minute to learn. Each brush kind of has its own characteristics that make it paint just a little bit different than the last one. Even though it's the same brand and style of brush, each one almost has its own personality, that the bristles act just a little bit different than the one before it. They flex a little bit different. It just takes some learning. If you have questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. I'll answer them as I can. Feel free to ask just about anything, and if I can't answer the question, I'll just tell you I can't answer that. Or if it's something that I can't answer, I'll try to find it and get back to you. It doesn't even have to be paint related. About the only thing I won't talk about is politics and money, except for how much something costs as far as the products that I'm using. All right. You know, Paul, back when I was in the military, I struggled with finding paint time as well. And then I got stuck on a rotational guard duty for a couple months where I pulled a 24-hour shift every 3 days. So essentially I worked 24 hours and I would be off for the next 2 days. And what I used to do is I would just take my miniatures with me to the guard duty. This was 10 years ago. 2010 is when I got out, so it was probably 11 years ago. I'd plan my painting for that day, pack up whatever paints I would need, plus a few extra, because I'm really bad at planning what paints I'm going to need. I just don't care to talk about politics. Doesn't interest me. I mean, it's important, but I don't feel like arguing about it, especially not on an entertainment stream. We get enough crap in the world every day. There are plenty of other places to talk about politics if you choose to do so. I just don't want it to be here. Anyone's personal political views does not change how I see them as a hobbyist. So, but if you want to talk about things like how my order of the last wave of Legion miniatures hasn't arrived yet, we can do that. I had to call about it today. Thanks, Earth. Yeah, I'm medically retired myself. I only did 3, but got hurt. I just realized I probably missed something on the last 2 miniatures that I've been working on, and I did. Or probably 3. I'll go back and correct them all right now. These black parts near the shoulder pads. Sometimes seeing an area on another miniature reminds me. Yes, that kind of political talk is perfectly fine. Although, as a separatist player, I can't agree with the tyranny of the Trade Federation. We can talk about how the rebels were a bunch of terrorists trying to destroy a government that was trying to provide peace and stability across the empire, or across the galaxy. We can talk about those politics also. All right. Now that all those are taken care of, back to our regularly scheduled miniature. I found that a lot of new people are finding my channel ever since, I don't know why, for the last few days. Probably looks like we had a Have I mentioned how much I dislike painting clones? Like, with a passion. Like, clones and stormtroopers are my least favorite things to paint. And clone armies are an entire army of stormtroopers. It's not even like, at least with the Empire, you have, like, stormtroopers. And that's it. But you have to paint this color scheme. No. Clones. Let's put everything in clone armor. Put all the things in clone armor. All of them. Every single one of them. Wonder how that planning council went. You know what? I think we need a new unit. What could we arm it with? How about clone armor? Alright, I need more paint. It's getting too thin. That one's going to require some touch-up. 2 more. I'm excited to get the Operative Vader and Luke. I have a bunch of them supposed to be delivered any minute now. But like I said, like I was saying, for some reason my order did not get delivered and they should ship today or tomorrow. I like painting Vader for some reason. I don't mind painting black by itself. I know a lot of people don't like it. I don't mind it. So painting Vader is not an issue for me. And the new Luke is mostly black also. So like I said, I'm really excited to get those painted. The Luke I'm getting is not for me. It's for a good buddy of mine. A guy that I paint most of his miniatures for. I've also got some custom Skullforge miniatures that a buddy of mine wants me to paint for him, the same one that I'm doing the Luke for. Dan over at Dan Wolf Games that used to be within the Legion community. He's unfortunately taken a step back from that, but he's still playing Legion. He's just not doing as much of the content side of the house, things like that. So he wanted a Operative Luke. That's what I hear. How does the Vader compare to the Celebration Vader? Because I think you've had a Celebration Vader, no? There's one stray hair on my brush that is bothering me. Oh, okay. I thought for some reason you had seen a Celebration one in person. I'm not gonna lie, after I painted my Celebration Vader just in time for Gen Con, part of the reason I ran a Vader list at Gen Con was so that I could put him on the table. Still working with that Necromancer's Cloak from Army Painter. Got this guy and one more left. I know I'm forgetting his arm pieces because I need to take it off to paint it, and his gun's too wet for me to do that. So, may have to wait on that. So we'll wait on that one, we'll come back to it. On to the Z6 guy. Painting clones, painting clones. The last clone set that I did, I converted I changed the kneeling trooper to the Z6 trooper. Since they're very interchangeable poses on most of these. But I just like the idea of this guy with the big heavy cannon having to kneel down in order to use it. It made sense to me. We're going for simple tabletop ready on these guys. But, you know, I've determined that my definition of tabletop's a little different than some other people's, so typically they come out to a little bit better than tabletop by some other people's standards. That's just what I paint to. So I have to paint, hopefully by the end of this week, finish up this squad of clones. I need to paint a set of droidicas and another bark speeder. What else? Essentially, I've got to finish up what I have left of 2 clone sets. So I've got to base a bunch of droids for a customer. Because I'm trying to get him some stuff so that he can start playing. So busy week. I think tomorrow night, while I'm playing my Edge of the Empire game, I will probably paint that other bark speeder. Since I'll probably want to do the droidicas on stream, because I've not done any, and that will likely come Thursday. And I want to stream the Rex, since I'm only probably ever going to paint one, unless I get a request from another customer. But I'm not actively taking a whole lot of commissions right now. I really do want to make this shift to content creation. I've enjoyed doing commissions, but what it's done is it's taken away my ability to paint my models. And so if I'm doing content creation, I can paint my miniatures and create content at the same time. I'll still keep a few, I have some very dedicated customers that have literally been with me from the beginning. One of them is one of my first customers ever. That's who these are for. So I'll probably keep painting their stuff for them. And I'll still keep painting Dan's stuff at Dan Wolf's Games from him. For him, I mean. Because he's a good friend of mine. But I don't think I'm going to be taking many more commissions beyond that. Who knows, I might stream Thursday and Friday night. Maybe I'll do the Droidicas one night and Captain Rex the next. We shall see. Yeah, Sarah, that's what I ran into. And then I started feeling like I was overcommitting. So it started to get to the point to where painting felt like a chore. And then I was stressed out because I'm not getting people's stuff done like I had promised. And not that I would like back out. I never took a commission I never finished. But they would end up taking longer than I wanted to because, or longer than I quoted, because I just didn't feel like doing it. And then that stress compiled, and then I ended up getting sick for a little while. I think part of that had to do with it. And so I just had to take a real look at, why am I doing this? What's the purpose behind my studio? And while initially it was to do commissions, that's why I started it, legitimately. I had to take a real look at, is that what my intended purpose is still? Or is it to help people learn how to paint their own stuff? And once I realized that it was the latter, that I wanted to be, as I disassemble this miniature on accident, that I wanted to be someone that could paint to a level that most people could reach. I'm going to get some blue tack and stick this guy down because his hot glue broke loose. I didn't put enough on there. When I realized that was what I wanted to do after some quote-unquote soul-searching, I got reinvigorated and really started leaning onto this stream thing. Again. So that's my process. That's how I got to where I am these last few days. Couple weeks, I mean. Who knows? That could change down the road. Because the way I do things is I try not to spend my personal, I try not to spend my income that I make at my day job on hobby stuff. I try to make all of my hobby self-supporting, and so I may realize that I need to do more, but I don't think so. And it's been fairly successful being self-supporting up till now, for the most part. Minus getting the stuff for streaming. Getting the stuff for streaming was pricey and was a talk I had to have with my wife. I needed a new computer to stream. So that took some begging and pleading. Not really. We talked about it, and I explained to her why I wanted to do it, and she's actually supportive of my hobbies, for the most part, as long as they don't impede on our budget. Nice. I've not heard of them. Almost done with the black. Alright. I needed to take this guy apart to paint his arm pieces. Alright. Oh yeah, I have seen you painting some of that stuff. Like the 3D terrain or whatever. I didn't realize that's what it was for, but I've seen your stuff. Alright, so now I'm going to glue stuff together. Sometimes. Now that all those are done. Gluing things together. We're gonna find which arm goes with what. I don't remember if it matters on the clones or not. I know the body doesn't matter, but as far as actual forearms, the opposite arm, like which gun and arm go together, but it doesn't look like it matters a whole lot, so simple enough. I do like that the arms on these are very posable. So you can kind of do what you want with it. I'm really appreciative of that. Excuse me, appreciative of that from FFG. I have to give them credit. They've made progress in their miniatures from the release of the game. There's somebody lurking in here that hasn't mentioned in the chat, because, you know, I've got 2 viewers the whole channel, the whole time. Now it's just 1. I must have scared him off. I really do enjoy interacting with my consumers, so feel free to talk. I promise I try to be a nice guy. I can't say there are no dumb questions, because I served in the military at one point, and I heard some pretty dumb questions sometimes. clone captain, commander, whatever he is, gets his arm put back on. After we glue these, I will give them a nice wash in Army Painter Dark Tone. No dumb hobby questions. Yes, that should be it. I will answer any hobby-related questions. I'm thinking my next video, teaser sneak peek for 5th Trooper Network, is going to be a intro to hobbying video. So like, what do you need to get started? Because I see that asked a lot, is people say, well, I don't think I can get into hobbying because it's too expensive. And it's really not. Honestly, it's not that pricey. You can make it as expensive or as inexpensive as you would like. So, yeah. In fact, I highly recommend, like, some people are like, well, you know, these brushes are really expensive, and I'm like, yeah, I don't recommend you start with those brushes either. You know, don't go out and buy Winsor & Newton's as your first brushes because you'll ruin them. You don't know what you're doing yet. I know what I'm doing and I ruin them. I'm really rough on brushes. It's one of the few things that I've not nailed down yet, is my brushes. Like, I know the concepts, I'm just not good at doing it. As you can see, for those interested, I have most of my old brushes from a long time ago. I started with just some cheap Michaels or Hobby Lobby or whatever craft brushes. I still keep them. They have uses. But those $10 packs you can get at your local craft store are great to start with. I primarily use Army Painter brushes now. I get them for free, so that's why. They're good brushes. They're cheap. They're also cheap, I think. I think you get a regiment brush for around $7 US, $9. I'm not sure exactly what they cost, but I like them. And then I feel less guilty when I end up messing one up. Got a stray hair on this one that I was finally able to isolate. It's gone now. Exactly. Alright. Let's mix up my wash that I'm going to use on these guys. So I'm going to use a thin down wash on these guys. I'm going to stick my quick shade washing medium over there. That's probably that vibration noise that you're hearing. I do apologize for that. So some quick shade medium. Some dark tone. Some water. Drop of flow aid since we added some water. Take one of my old messed up brushes and see what I think this looks like. I'm probably going to need to make up a little bit more of it. Yeah. Let's mix up just a touch more. And I honestly put enough flow weight in there from the first time. All right. I'm happy with that. Yep. So I'm not trying to get anything super... Thank you, Paul. I'm not trying to get anything super dark on this wash. I want it to be enough to add some definition to the miniature, so... Just using an old large barrel brush to apply this on everywhere. Wash the whole mini. I go for a little bit of a grungier look on my clones than I do on my stormtroopers, so that's why I don't have a problem washing the whole miniature. My stormtroopers, I do a lighter wash than this even. But I just feel like clones are dirty. You know, they or dirtier, I should say. Not like they're dirty as in, I mean, they're dirty also, they're bad people, but whatever. That's a separate conversation. Then I'm going to take off, use a wet brush and take off some of the wash on some of the highlight areas that I know I'm going to be highlighting back later. So like the top of the helmets, anything upturned, make it easier. Oh, no worries, Paul. I mean, being attacked by cats sounds like a serious problem. I hope you got them under control. My cats don't get to come into my paint room. Alright, wet brush. Or damp brush, I should say, and remove some of this off. We'll come back and we'll highlight these spots, but for now we just want to take some of the... make our jobs easier for later by taking off some of the wash off of the highlighted areas. Yeah, Sarah, if I were doing anything higher than gaming quality miniatures, then I would do that. But since these are just meant to be used on the table, I'm not worried about them. For display pieces, I would. So for some of my Kingdom Death Monster stuff, I did that because it's, yes, it's a gaming piece, but if you're familiar with board gaming at all, those are some high quality resin miniatures from Kingdom Death Monster. So much so that, like, I paid $400 for the base game to play it, and it's a board game. Now it comes with a boatload of miniatures in there that I have loved painting. I have more of them to do, but I mean the expansions are $75 to $100 per. And you basically get one miniature, some model, or one model. It's not really calling a miniature many of the times is a misnomer. They're very big models. I did a live stream of my Manhunter from that game. But I've seen some of the stuff that some of like the painters for KDM do, and good lord, like I couldn't hold a candle to them. There's some amazing artists in some of those Facebook groups over for Kingdom Death Monster. Like, it's just insane. And so they'll post these display pieces from over there, and I'll drool over them, and then I'll post my, here's the top of my skill level piece, and I'm like, alright, I need to just leave this group. I didn't, though, because I learn a lot from them. Or I learned things that, hey, I wanted to learn how to do that. So, that's another hobby tip, is don't get intimidated because somebody paints better than you. There are tons of people that I think paint way better than I do. If I gave up because there was, if you ever gave up because there was somebody that did something better than you, then you would never do anything. You know, the really cool thing about acrylic miniatures, or acrylic paint in miniatures, is if you don't like what you've done, you can strip it off, and it's not that difficult to do. And you'll get better. You have to practice. My very first miniatures, if you ever saw them, I don't own them anymore, I have sold them recently actually, were for a game called Hordes, and they were some Legion of Everblight miniatures that I painted in a green and purple scheme, which I really liked the color scheme. But man, were they bad. They were awful. I painted them green and purple. There was no highlighting, no shading, just green, like this color green. Let me pull it up. It wasn't these actual colors, but it was something very similar. They were this color green with this color purple, and there was no shading, no transitions, no nothing. Man, they were rough. But that's where I started. And then from there, and there was a guy that helped me get into the hobby from the local gaming shop there, and I used to really love his miniatures, and I used to think, well, one day I want to paint like him. And I still like his stuff, he does real well. But it came full circle for me. I'm still friends with him, and he actually complimented me the other day on my miniatures and told me he remembers where I came from. Almost, I used to say 10 years ago when I started streaming. It was 2008 when I started painting, so almost 12 years ago. Yeah, 12 years ago was when I painted my first miniature. I had heard about this game called Warhammer 40k growing up, and I was always intrigued by it. I didn't know what it was. All I knew was that it was a tabletop game. I heard one of my good friends talking about it one time, and I didn't know anything about it for the longest time. And so, randomly, when I was in the military, I was like, well, you know what? I'm old enough now that I can figure out what this is. So I didn't have kids yet. I was married, but I didn't have kids. And I started looking into it, and I didn't start with Warhammer, I started with Hordes. We're gonna have to wait just a bit for those guys to dry. So we'll chit-chat for a minute while I look at a few things. We'll need this color next, Spaceship Exterior. So I started looking into it. I went down to the local shop, and I demoed the game with him. I called up on a whim and said, "Hey, are you down there?" And the guy happened to be there. He said, "Yeah, coming down. I got a couple extra armies." And demoed the game, loved it, bought the Legion core set, or Legion of Everblight core set at the time, and started painting it. These are the only two colors we've used on these miniatures so far. 3 in a tone. Started painting it, enjoyed it, but like I said, the colors were rough, and then on top of all of it, I gloss coated it, and that was it. So they were shiny as all get out, but I was real happy with them because they were mine. And so I say that long story to say, just paint. If you are afraid of messing up your miniatures, paint. I could have stripped them if I wanted to, I never did. Just paint it. And then if you don't like it, throw it in the thing. But you know what you did is you got better. You practiced. And then paint it again. And try it again. And do what you have to make sure that you're painting the things that you want to paint. So, while I wait, I'm going to get this mixing over here. So if you hear some weird vibration noise, that's my Vortex mixer. It's not very quiet. But, yeah. That's the first tip I can give you if you're interested in learning how to paint, is just get out there and paint it. And don't be afraid to, like I said, don't judge yourself based upon how well somebody else does. There's painters that I really like that I'm like, well, those guys are really good, and I'll never reach the level that they're at. Mostly because I just don't have the patience to do it to the level that they're at. Not sure why this is clogged up somehow. It's not a common occurrence for me in army painter bottles. Yeah, I think I've talked about that topic long enough. I think my agitator ball got stuck in the neck of my bottle. It did. That's exactly what happened. Well, I have to get that off with some rubbing alcohol a little bit later. Or now. Where's my rubbing alcohol? See, I never played D&D growing up either. Again, it was another thing that I was aware of. It was something that I always wanted to try. But it was not... I didn't have any friends that played it. Part of it was I grew up during that era in a religious household where D&D was taboo. And everyone was like, oh, we don't play D&D. That's evil stuff. So... yeah, I never got to play it growing up, unfortunately. I didn't play my first D&D session until I was 20-something. Alright, we're gonna start working on some of these guys that are a little more dry than others. So, I've got Spaceship Exterior. We're thinning it out pretty well. About, if you were to paint it on your thumbnail, about that consistency. Where it's not completely opaque. And we're going to start highlighting some of these areas with a detail brush. As soon as I find it. You don't have to use a detail brush, you can use whatever you have. I just use a detail brush for the highlights. So make sure you pull your highlights up to the highest area, because that's where it's going to deposit the most paint. Nice, Paul. Oh, I was a turbo nerd growing up. I just didn't get to play those style of games, but it was all video gaming. That's where my turbo nerddom came out. Video gaming and computers. I played Magic the Gathering for a minute with some cards I got off of a kid used who didn't want them anymore for like $15 for a shoebox. So just bringing back some of these highlights here. Primarily focusing on upturned areas and ridges. Because like I said, I want them to feel grungy. Well, I'm hoping that the audio issues are finally resolved and that this sounds better than any other streams I've ever done. So I'll have to give it a listen back to see what I think when I'm done. Once YouTube finishes its post-processing and all that stuff that it does with live streams. Highlight under these eyes here and above the mouthpiece. Really take your time on highlighting the face because it's the focal point of the miniature, and highlighting the face can help draw away from imperfections on the rest of the mini. So, simple hobby cheating tip there is focus your highlights on the areas you want people to look at. Your eye will naturally be drawn to the higher areas of light. So, yeah. Freebie tip there for you. Alright, one clone trooper done. I think I'll come back with some white highlights later We may go past 11:30 on this one. I don't know yet. I may just stop at 11:30 because I'm still kind of beat. Yesterday, like I said, on Sunday night, I was up until 4 a.m. for some reason. A bad bout of insomnia kicked in. And so yesterday I got home from work. I ended up working late. Got home at about 7 p.m. Eastern. And ate dinner. And was asleep by 8:15 p.m. Eastern, which is completely abnormal for me. Normally I'm a night person. I stay up until midnight, 1 in the morning. But I just needed it. I'm not sure why I was so insomniac on Sunday night. Probably the game had me worked up. It's the only thing I can attribute it to. Battletech, that's one I never got into. Another one I was familiar with, but never got into. I was always a Star Wars nerd growing up, so I discovered Star Wars when I was about 11. I met some friends that were like, they were really into Star Wars, and they were turbo dorks. And they were quoting Star Wars one day, and I was like, what are you all talking about? And I'd literally never heard of it at that point. My parents had failed me. And so, of course, they were all like, well, what are you talking about? You never heard of Star Wars. So they had to enlighten me. And my first birthday after meeting them was a sleepover where we streamed all of the, or not streamed, we binged all of the 3 movies at the time, as the others were not out yet. So, that was my first exposure to Star Wars. Was having this sleepover birthday party where I received the movies as a gift and binged watching them all with my friends. One of my friends played in Rifts, was his, and he kept talking about getting into Rifts, and we never got a game going, so I just never got to play it. This is the second part of why I hate painting clones, is bringing the whites back after doing all this work on them. I should retitle these 2 paint videos that I've done for the clones as Why I Hate Painting Clones and Part 2 of Why I Hate Painting Clones. Are you talking about the West End RPG of Star Wars, Sareth? I think it was the D6 system back then, maybe. I have the core book for it because I managed to come across it later and I had to have it. So I think I found it in a bargain bin at some gaming store somewhere for like $2 or something. So I bought it, and I haven't played it. I found a group that was getting ready to start playing it, and then the GM left that was going to run it. Like, ended up having to move out of town all of a sudden, unfortunately. Thanks to military orders. Alright. Second clone done. Ooh, I missed some washing on his leg here, so he'll have to wait. Try to blend that in a little bit as much as possible. There we go. So we'll set him aside. We'll come back to that. Let's get the commander out of the way. You can do as much highlighting or as little highlighting as you want on these miniatures. This pretty much goes for anything that I do on these miniatures I painted. You can do as much or as little as you want of them. You don't even have to do the highlighting. They look fine, honestly, without it, with just the wash. But I like to do the highlight to take things just the next step. Yeah, I'm just doing these as shinies. The customer that I spoke with said that, and the reason he did that, the customer I'm doing these for, he said that it's mostly the Phase 2 troopers that get some of those regimental markings, and so he wanted these to be shinies. That, and for the videos, if I leave them shinies, you can do whatever you want as far as markings go. Whereas if I were to paint regimental markings on them for the video, sometimes people feel like obligated to copy exactly what the video does. And that's fine. If you want to copy my paintwork, I'm not offended or anything. It's actually very flattering. Do what you want. But this way it's just a generic palette that people could do what they want as far as markings go. But yeah, if you were to do regimental markings, I would have applied their markings prior to applying the wash. I'm going to be completely honest. I don't. The clone era of lore is not my forte. Because it came on when I was a little bit older. In this, and I just really liked the Galactic Civil War stuff. So I never watched the Clones Wars series. I know, shoot me. I did see, of course, episodes 1, 2, and 3 in the theaters. But my understanding is people really connected with the clones from the series, not necessarily from the movies. So, yeah, I don't have the emotional connection to these. The reason I like droids is because I just like droids. I've always had a thing for robots of any sort. So I like the idea of a droid army. There we go. 3 down. A lot more than I want to paint to go. And after painting Stormtroopers, I feel like I could do tons of these, even though I don't like doing it. I still have 2 more squads of these to paint also. I forgot about that until just now, and now I want to cry. For my customer as part of his 2 core sets. So, yay! As the night goes on, I start getting a little less conscious about where I'm holding my miniatures when I paint. Oh, I still have all of... So as far as commission stuff go, I have a Sabine that I just received I need to paint from a customer. I have a Thrawn Skullforged miniatures to paint for someone, and the only reason I took that miniature commission is because I wanted to paint Thrawn. So I have 2 dewbacks to do for the same customer as these clones. And all of the new stuff that just came out last week to do for the same customer. He doesn't do Rebels, so it's just droids, clones, Empire. Well, you can Zen place all you want on painting white. I can't Zen white. It's frustrating for me. She didn't take me very long. I can get her knocked out in a night. Usually. But I've done like 4 of them, so I've got my system down on her. My son wants a Sabine, but he has an Imperial army. But he just keeps saying, I want a Sabine, I want a Sabine. So I may just buy him one or give him mine, because I don't plan on painting my Rebel army either anymore. And let him just paint it. I've been contemplating. So if you follow my page, since not this Christmas, but the one prior, you saw that I painted him an entire Legion army for Christmas. And so I keep telling him, well, I'll paint your stuff, but then I keep getting busy. So I think he's been asking, he's like, well, can I just paint my stuff? And I'm probably just going to tell him, yeah, go ahead. They're just minis. And he's 8, and it'll help him keep building his... Well, he's going to be 9 in a couple weeks, but it'll help him build his interest in the hobby some more if I let him paint his own stuff. Alright. We will probably call that a night there. I don't have it in me to finish painting the whites on these guys. I'm just tired. So, we'll finish knocking them out. I'll knock them out tomorrow night off stream. The only thing you're seeing me not do is, or you're not seeing me do, which you can go back and see in the actual video of where I did the initials the initial how to paint stream for these guys was finish up the highlights, and then I would dry brush all of the metallic blacks, so like the guns, with a metallic, like a gunmetal. So yeah, that's what I would do. No problem. Thanks for hanging out, Sarah. Thanks for hanging out, everyone. I appreciate you stopping on by. I'm just gonna hang out for a second while I clean my brushes. But yeah, I'll be back on Thursday night with the stream with something exciting, either Droidicas or Rex, probably Droidicas. So we'll do that, and then maybe if I feel up to it, we'll stream on Friday night also. I may not stream Friday night, I'm not sure, but I am thinking Thursday nights might be my regular stream night. Tuesday nights are going to be an oddity for me, but I wanted to try out my new microphone, so because typically I have Cub Scouts with my kids on Tuesday nights. So yeah, that's me for tonight. Thanks for stopping on by, everyone. If you enjoyed it, like I said, hit the like button. If you have not, subscribe. I appreciate the subscriptions. The likes help me know what you guys like to see. And if you'd like to see when I go live, hit that bell on the homepage of my website or my YouTube page, and you'll get notifications anytime that I go live. So, other than that, thanks for stopping on by. Thanks for checking out my new stream. I just realized I need to change my logo to my new one down in the corner here, so we'll have to do that soon. But like I said, thanks for stopping on by. It's Dustin with Jagged Brush Studios. We'll see you next time. Have a good time and get out there and paint more minis.